We are biologically hardwired to assume that a brush with the unknown will end in disaster. If you step into the dark and meet an unexplained entity, the instinctual expectation is malice and pain. But in 2014, a college student named Raul wasn't thinking about malevolent entities. He was just a carefree guy in Delhi looking for a way to take a vacation with his friends. Raul had strict parents who rarely let him travel, so he pitched them a fabricated academic deep dive into regional agriculture, masking a joyride as crucial university fieldwork. The destination they chose for this fake research was the tea estates of Assam. It is an incredibly lush but deeply isolated environment. Because the entire trip was built on a foundation of teenage deception and the simple goal of goofing off, this group of friends was perfectly primed to ignore the early warning signs of genuine peril. A few days into the trip, Raul's behavior shifted. He started checking out of reality, staring out at the sky, smiling to himself for no reason, taking meticulous care of his appearance, soaking himself in cologne, dressing up in fresh clothes to walk out the hostel door with no explained destination. His friends, Veer and Kartikeya, decided to tail him. But in rural Assam, the unstructured dirt paths and local traffic patterns mean a sudden rush of vehicles can easily block a pedestrian's view. A line of cars cut the friends off, and by the time the road was clear, Raul was gone. At first, they figured he was just off exploring. But as dusk crept in and then total darkness, that initial annoyance morphed into legitimate panic. You have to remember the era. In 2014, Google Maps wasn't the omnipresent safety net it is today. They were stranded in an unmapped rural region with zero way to digitally trace their missing friend. The lighthearted college trip had officially evaporated. They were now operating entirely in the dark, facing a high-stakes survival scenario in an unfamiliar ecosystem. Back at the hostel, a local caretaker tried to pass the time by sharing the region's history. The conversation naturally drifted to local folklore, specifically the story of a girl named Juri. According to the legend, she died a horrific death in a domestic gas stove fire. The locals claimed her spirit never left. She supposedly roamed these waist-high tea bushes, targeting young men and appearing out of nowhere to lure the living away into her realm. The friends laughed it off. They mocked the caretaker, dismissing the tale as an elaborate campfire story meant to scare tourists. But as the clock struck 9 p.m., the laughter died down. This is what folklore does. It acts as a psychological primer. It teaches our brains exactly what to expect and what to fear the moment the lights go out. With Raul missing, the entire village mobilized. They plunged into pitch-black fields, sweeping flashlights across thick vegetation, calling his name into the void. And then they found him. Raul was lying motionless on the ground in the middle of a field, completely unresponsive. He exhibited specific physical symptoms of a severe shock. His lips were blue, and his core body temperature had plummeted so low that his skin was freezing cold to the touch. In a state of absolute terror, his friends and the villagers dragged his limp body out of the field to a nearby shop. They built a fire right there, frantically trying to thaw his freezing body and pull him back to consciousness. Based on the physical evidence, the freezing skin, the sudden disappearance, the remote location, the violent legend of Juri appeared to be brutally true. Finally, Rahul's eyes fluttered open. He looked around in absolute shock at the crowd gathered around him. Before anyone could demand answers, he asked a single question. Who is Juri? The story he told next defied every horror trope in the book. He described a silent, magnetic mutual attraction. He saw her on their first day and was so captivated he spent the next 2 days seeking her out, experiencing zero hostility. The climax of their interaction wasn't a violent ambush. They were just standing together quietly in the field when she calmly asked him if he would come with her. Right at that moment, the distant sound of his friends shouting his name broke the silence. Rahul turned his head toward the voices. When he looked back, she was gone, completely vanished into thin air. A moment of wonder. The entity from the local legends hadn't laid a finger on him. Despite the weight of the village folklore, she did absolutely nothing to cause him physical harm. If the entity was entirely peaceful, why were his lips blue? Why did his core temperature crater and his consciousness simply snap? The answer lies in psychosomatic shock. Confronted with an impossible reality, the brain triggers a massive systemic physical failsafe. When the entity vanished, Raoul's brain finally processed what he was standing alone in the dark with, causing his central nervous system to simply power down. Today, back in Delhi, Raoul lives a healthy, normal life. There is no lingering curse, no recurring nightmare, no sickness. In fact, he uses the experience as a brag at parties. He's the guy who met a beautiful ghost. Unexplained energies might cross our paths with no ill intent. In Raoul's case, the only thing that actually physically damaged him was his own body's response to an impossible reality.